William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 252nd meeting since we started in February of 2009. This actually started in Chicago in 1951 for the purpose of solving all the world's problems. They're still working at it. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something, don't care what it is. We give them an hour to make a presentation. They go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind to interrupt everyone and listen one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. And then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches. And then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to what the speaker said, for or against. And the speaker gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. Now, before we put our speaker on, now is the time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Now is the time to do it. Get it out. Do you have announcements you want to make? Anybody? No? No announcements? I can't believe it. No one has announcements. You got any announcements? No? You got any announcements? Nobody has. Jim, you got announcements? He's coming up here. I think you're going to have an announcement. He's going to have an announcement. You have an announcement. Oh, okay. It's tomorrow Sunday.
Well, I'll be real brief. I'm glad to see all of you tonight. And I was just looking around the room to see if we were half first-timers and half old-timers. We have a mixture. But welcome to all of you tonight. Those of you who have not been coming rarely, we'll hope you hear something good tonight and can find it enjoyable and come back and join us again. Like I usually say, we appreciate Barbeck's having us in and not charging us rent to walk in the door, which is nice. A lot of meeting places won't do that. In exchange, we promise to buy food and put money on the table for our server who takes care of us and take good care of them like they're taking good care of us. So please remember to do that as you're going through the evening. And I know you'll appreciate our speaker who stepped up at the last minute and took the place of an ill speaker we had scheduled on tonight. And Tom did a good job of finding the replacement and keeping us going tonight. So it should be an enjoyable evening. If anybody else has anything they want to announce or tell us about, well, please come on up and do it.
Any other announcements? You got any? You said tomorrow Sunday. All right. That's your announcement, all right. Anybody else have any announcements you want to make? Okay, December 13th, we have Stephen Butler. He's going to talk about why the Republican Party is bad for both America and the world. That's his opinion, so we'll hear it. On January 3rd, New Year's resolution, a much better tomorrow. Mike Goose, he's a speaker, writer, political pluralist, activist. The first Muslim, perhaps the first non-Jewish person to commemorate the Holocaust. He's going to discuss how hate is one of the many sources disrupting peaceful functioning of a society, and how it's our duty, both individually and severally, to track down the source of such bias, hate, and work and mitigate it. Anyway, that's on your itinerary there. I don't want to read all this. And January 10th, we have Pat O'Connell's going to talk about can we change the world with the power of our minds. And on January 17th, Kenneth Everett's going to talk about join the math revolution, no pencil, no paper, no calculator. That'll be interesting. On February 7th, Judge Martin Hoffman, 6th District Court, will be here with Julie Petit, I think it is, of Petit Law Firm. She discussed whether Texas should continue to expand the use of residential judicial foreclosures. This is all on the itinerary there. You can look it over. anyway, that's coming out. Now tonight, we had Catherine Savers McGovern. She's a retired assistant U.S. attorney, Dallas, and recent Democratic nominee to U.S. Congress, District 32, with current practice at McGovern Law Firm. She was going to talk about beyond a fair living wage. Unfortunately, she's had an accident. I don't know what the problem is. She had to go to the doctor yesterday. A disc slipped or something, and she's in terrible pain, and she's on her back, so she can't make it tonight. So I did my best. I got Jim Davis. He's sitting over here. He's going to be our speaker tonight. I'm not sure what he's going to talk about beyond a fair living wage. I don't know quite what his topic is, but it'll be along the same lines. And he has agreed to sub in here for Catherine Savers McGovern, and I want you all to give a very, very warm welcome to Jim Davis.
Greetings, everybody. Catherine, I guess, was going to give her position on should Texas voters pass a constitutional amendment establishing a minimum wage of $12 an hour with annual adjustments based on COLA. Yes, but they won't. So settles that. Actually, probably it'd be a better idea for it'd be a national effort, I think, but that's not going to happen either. But what I want to do tonight is, should the minimum wage be raised at all? And since 1950, it's been raised 20 times. So there's quite a few statistics that we could use to make a good decision. No one seems to use the statistics in their arguments, but I'm going to. In 2006, the minimum wage per buying power was at the lowest it has ever been since 1950. Now the last three minimum wage raises to the current $7.25 an hour, it was increased to $5.85 an hour from $5.15 an hour in 2007. Well, we know what happened the next year, but $5.85 was, most people were making more than that anyway. It seems like $8.50 an hour was a pretty good number back in those days. So the last three raises, mainly because of the Wall Street crash, they didn't help. We don't know if they helped or not, because one could make an argument that it would have been a lot worse had they not been raised. But let's go back to 1950. The minimum wage was 40 cents an hour. They raised it to 75 cents an hour. What happened? By the way, 75 cents an hour then is the same as $7.35 an hour today. But we've had a lot more productivity gains. But the minimum wage was raised to 75 cents an hour on January 25th. And what happened was the most rapid increase in GDP growth that I know of. It went from excuse me. it went from minus 1.6% to 10.4% by the time the Korean War broke out in June. That's GDP growth. Right. The unemployment rate went from over 6% down to, it went down to, let's see, about 3% by 1952. Of course, the Korean War was going on then. So, now the Korean War was over in 53, but unemployment kept on going down. By 1954, it was around about 2.25%. Then in 54, it shot back up. Shot back down in 56 to around 4%. And then on March 1st of 56, the minimum wage was increased to $1 an hour. Well, that kind of stabilized. I mean, unemployment went down a little bit. GDP growth stabilized. But when they raised it to $1.15 an hour, the unemployment rate went down from about 7% down to below 6%. Now, the raise to $1.25 an hour did a lot more good. We saw the unemployment rate go down to about a little less than 5%. Oh, wait a minute. It went down to about 2%. Of course, we had the Vietnam War going on. Now, they raised the minimum wage to $1.40 an hour in 67. The unemployment rate flatlined. In 68, they raised it to $1.60. The unemployment rate flatlined. To me, that tells me they found the magic number. It remained unemployment remained below 4% up until 1970. Basically, notwithstanding the last 3 minimum wage increases, 14 out of 17 times, the unemployment rate went down and GDP growth went up. The basic law of capitalism was met. More money, more customers for business. Since 1949, we've had unemployment down 39 times. During the past 60 years, unemployment has gone down 39 times and up 21 times. No change 4 times. But when the minimum wage was increased, we had when we had that most of the time is when the unemployment rates went down. Now today we have a minimum wage of $7.25. That is less, adjusted for inflation, than the $7.35 in 1950. You know, I mean, we've had a lot of productivity gains since 1950. About 170%, I think, gain in productivity. And, you know, the economy's just been sputtering along. Of course, a lot of it has to do with foreign trade, but notwithstanding that, I think if they raise the minimum wage up to $12 an hour, we would see a boom. There are more people working for minimum wage jobs now than there have been. And in a few more years, it's going to be about 35 to 40% of the workforce. By the way, not to change the subject, but this is kind of interesting. In 1968, my company paid benefits would be worth $28,900 per year today. That's more than 30% of America's households earn today. Combined, that will be about $99,500 a year. Same job pays $50,000. No pension, very few health care benefits, no 13-week paid vacations. Every 5 years we got 13 weeks paid vacation. We had a Blue Cross Blue Shield health care plan that you paid the doctor's office fee, everything else was covered. Now we had prescription, dental and eye care, 20% deductible. That's gone. Anyway, should a constitutional amendment be passed? Yes, it should, in Washington, D.C. Doing that will ensure that incomes keep up with gains in productivity. This whole crap about supply side economics does not work, folks. If productivity goes up 25% and wages go down, stay the same, you don't have any buying power. It's as simple as that. Productivity gains must be met with gains in purchasing power. That's the way it works. Always has, always will. I mentioned a little bit ago that I'm not talking about the last three raises. That we had 3 years where the unemployment rate went down, went up, and GDP growth went down. One of those years was in 1974. That's when they had the OPEC oil embargo. Another one was around 81 when we had the Federal Reserve was trying to wring inflation out of the economy, and they raised the minimum wage of $3.35 an hour, and it went the wrong way. The minimum wage increased to $3.85 an hour. I believe it was it was in 1990, $3.80 an hour. It didn't do anything because most people were making about $3.85 an hour then. But the next year when they raised it to $4.25 an hour, guess what happened? Unemployment rate dropped 4 years in a row. GDP growth went up 4 years in a row. So in answer to the question, should the Texas voters vote for a constitutional amendment to raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour and base it on the consumer price index? The answer is obviously yes. I mean, well, it is obvious. I mean, the facts and statistics prove it. Huh? Go ahead. I'm ready for questions.
I said they don't prove anything, they just tell you what happened.
Well, they don't prove anything.
We don't, you haven't said anything about the mechanism that might bring about these changes. When you
Sure I did. It
No, you
increased buying power.
You told me a result. You didn't show me the mechanism. You didn't trace it through. It increased buying power for a lot of people, right?
Right.
And what did that do? It increased their income.
Right.
That didn't increase GDP.
Yes, it did.
No, GDP increased. But you haven't demonstrated that was the reason. GDP fluctuated all around. Minimum wages fluctuated all around. How did paying more people money create an increase in GDP? Only if the extra money is factored into the... I understand, it's a graph. It's a graph. It's no better than the numbers you used to make the graph out of. You've got to make an argument about mechanisms.
All right, I'm doing that. Look here.
No, looking there is not an argument about mechanisms. It's an argument about results.
All right. Whatever you say.
Whatever you say.
The mechanism is an increase in money, buying power.
Why did it not continue to work?
Because
Changing the minimum wage. What happened when the minimum wage lagged in buying power?
productivity gains. That's what happened.
Why did it happen?
Why did productivity gains happen? Technology?
Well, I understand the cause. But look, you're saying increase the minimum
Tell you what,
wage. The minimum wage.
Let's me and him have a debate next meeting, next year. I will destroy you. I will come prepared.
I've been destroyed before. I keep coming back to life.
Well, I will destroy you if we do that.
You increase the amount of money in the pockets of wage earners.
Right.
And they went out and spent it.
Right, exactly.
Right. And therefore, what happened?
GDP growth went up. Unemployment rate went down.
GDP growth went up. How did that happen?
I just told you.
No, you didn't.
What part of don't you understand a minimum wage increase is?
A minimum wage gives people more money in their pocket.
And they do what with it?
They spend it.
And
that's the basic argument.
And that creates
that increasing the minimum wage will have a stimulative effect on the economy, which is an absolutely sound argument, which the Republicans can't seem to fathom. But it's a
you're saying
temporary increase. Where is the dynamics that cause all this increase in GDP? GDP is measured as a dollar amount, so there were more dollars in production. Was that exactly equal to the extra dollars that were spent? If so, what did it mean? Did it mean that widgets were just more expensive that we produced?
Look at that.
Yeah, I can see that. I could draw those things. They are a record of what the numbers were. They have no information by themselves on the dynamics that produced the numbers.
All right, what did produce numbers then? You tell me.
Oh, you tell me. You're the one who had a thesis to present. I
came in here. I was invited to do this meeting about an hour before I even knew I was going to do it.
I'm not saying there's something wrong with you. I'm saying there are gaps in trying to reason about this stuff.
There are no gaps. Look at the dates of the increase and look at what happens. There it is. Question.
Answer this question. One of the mechanisms is what's called an increase in demand. In other words, they had more money to spend, so they went out and bought more Fords, more of this, more of that. So the production went up so the GDP went up. So
But he didn't buy that, see?
you don't buy that? Yeah. That's a mechanism. Oh, okay.
What did I say?
Well, you didn't say it that way.
All that is a
Increased demand.
is a restatement of the arithmetic.
Restate, well, I don't know about that.
And after all those increases happened, what prepared you for the next increase, or the need for the next increase in minimum wage?
Inflation. Okay.
What caused the inflation?
It could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of things. So you're going to blame it on the minimum wage increases? You're going to blame it on the minimum wage increases?
It's part of the dynamic. I don't blame it on the minimum wage.
There's lots of things that come into play. Oil, energy.
Which ones?
Forget. Look. Never mind. Next question.
Well,
I'm not going to argue with you.
we're talking about maybe $12 an hour. That's really kind of arbitrary. I don't know who selected $12 an hour. How about $14 an hour? Would you go for that?
Better yet,
How about 20?
it should be about 18.
18? Well,
If you factor in inflation and productivity gains, it should be about 18.
well, it's all arbitrary in the flip of a coin. You could say maybe $30 an hour.
No, too high.
Why is it too high?
Because it doesn't equate to inflation and productivity gains. That's why.
Well, that is just as arbitrary as $12.
No, it's not.
Yeah, just as arbitrary as $12. You just pick your number, and how far do you go with it? 16, 18?
Well, okay. How about the increase to $1.25 an hour is worth $10.68 today? That's what it's worth today.
I'm just saying that it's all a flip of a coin and somebody's decision, and
it's not a flip of a
you will
coin.
reach a point to where you cannot do it, and it will not work, and something will collapse. And
Yeah, $30 an hour would be too high. That would be bad.
but 16 is still okay.
Sure. It'd be okay. Based on historical data. It'd be okay.
Next question.
You can take. You go home and you pull up any performance chart on unemployment rates, and then you insert the dates of the raises, and you see what happens. There's too much of a correlation. There's too much evidence to say that they go down after the raise goes into effect. It's not. I mean, it could not be a coincidence. Could not be. I don't have the chart that from 1950 to 2000. I wish I could have found it, but I couldn't. But I mean, if you would look at the peaks and valleys, when you plug in a date, you'll see that it's just too close to be a coincidence. Ray, I sent you a copy of that book I wrote. It's in your email. Open it up. It's in there. Look at it. Next question.
Jim,
Yes.
you mentioned a couple of times and heard that one of the reasons for the increased productivity is because of technology.
Right.
And I think one of the issues we have now is that technology is increased, but the labor input that involved that technology hasn't been as it's, I know exactly how to say this, but it's more difficult to push that productivity gain to the labor side because so much of it is related to the capital side.
Okay, well,
And so I think there has to be a minimum wage to say, well, that's the way that labor's going to get part of the share of it.
I agree. Now, if you take 1968 average incomes and break it down into different, like under $6,700, then $6,700 to $13,300, and then $13,388 to $20,000. Well, let's just go on up here to between 53,469 to 40,150. In 1968, 6.9% of America's households earned that much. But adjusted for inflation, the median household income for the bottom was $31,244 for the bottom 90% of American households. That was the average. $31,244. In 1968, 79% of American families earned more than $31,244. 25% earned between $67,900 and $100,400.
Jim.
12.2% earned between $100,400 and $167,339. I don't think I need to tell you folks that that's not happening today.
Jim,
Yes.
I understand that the millennials, that's what I've been dealing with lately.
The what now?
Millennials, that's the new generation. There we go.
Okay.
Talk like a rock star. There we go. And my boss had hired us a new gaffer, and I was downtown, had all my equipment. And the gaffer's job is to hang on to all my equipment. If I move, he's supposed to take it with us.
Okay.
And I'm in the middle of a crowd. I'm standing recording people for this little stand down or stand up they have. And I have my gaffer right beside me. His hands are empty. I fired him right there. I'm told millennials process work a whole lot differently than us. How does this all figure into the pay rate?
I don't know.
You can't pay them. You can't pay them.
Well, I'm not going to get into that.
Oh, come on. This has been a running
I'm not
battle
gonna get
between
into
us.
that.
This has been a running battle between us. Oh,
It's always been hard to find good help, okay?
2 points.
All right. Next.
Run of questions.
I got one.
We got one.
All right. I think you would agree that the guts has been taken out of the bottom 20% of the American public in terms of buying power and wages and so on.
Ripped, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the evidence is quite clear.
Right.
Ever since about 73, their share of the cake has gone down and down and down.
Well, I'll give you.
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the. Why do you think there's been no great revolt about this? Because
Apathy.
It's incredible to me that the people at the bottom have been so quiescent.
They don't know what's going on.
And so sociologically, why do you think this has happened with no protest? Yes, the unions have been crushed. But when I came, of course, in the late 60s, the young people were very active. They were protesting, and in fact, because of Johnson, a lot of social progress in terms of welfare and whatnot happened. Now the question is, it seems to me that the younger generation have really been hit.
They don't know it.
Well, no, they know it.
No, they don't know.
No, they do know it.
They don't know that 25% of American households earned between $66,900 and $100,400 in 1968. They don't know that. If they did, they'd be pissed off.
Well, shall I say, because I took, actually all the way across the Western world, this same phenomenon has happened in Europe and here.
You and I lived through
the golden age.
the golden age.
We did.
And the raw deal.
No, all my life I've been, even though I was born before the war, and seemingly it was a terrible time to be born, in fact, it was a great time to be born, especially in England because of the welfare state.
Right.
Now, so I've been superbly lucky. I came here when engineers were actually paid great money.
Right.
In fact, I'm a bit like what Whoopi Goldberg said, that the white people just love black people. After all, they sent boats to Africa to get them, you see. Well, obviously, I can say that the Americans loved engineers. They sent recruiting people to England to hire me, and that's what happened. That's why I came. I was recruited.
Okay.
Anyway, so getting back to the young people today, I think it's they realize something's gone badly wrong.
They don't know why.
Well,
They don't.
And so the question is, my question about you is, why do you think they fail to see it? Because it's hitting them. They come out of college with what, 150k debt? You know, it's absurd what's gone on, really.
Well, I know.
And the question is why. You know, what would you say? You know, why are they so? Why aren't they up in arms about it?
Because they don't know what happened. They don't know what caused it. They don't know. They don't have a good understanding of the history of the middle class. They don't. They've been told a pack of lies all their lives, and they buy into it. You know that. I know that.
Well, why? Since it happened on our watch, so to speak, what was wrong with us? Because after all, the kids are our progeny and so on, and grandchildren and so on. Why did we sit back? Why were we so quiescent? Is another question.
Well, most of the people in this room know what's going on, I think. Pretty good idea. But most of the people don't. They don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. Otherwise, it wouldn't be going on.
Would you blame? Would you say that there's a fundamental problem with education then, that these people don't understand the political reality and the financial reality. of life.
Exactly. They don't understand.
I can tell you that we did growing up in London. I mean, we knew what was what, and I think most people did. They knew about politics. They knew about money.
You ever heard the term revisionist history? That's part of it.
I mean, do you think this whole notion of American exceptionalism sort of blew away people's brains so they weren't thinking anymore? I mean, explain it to me. Because
what do they hear every day on TV? The minimum wage will cost jobs. They believe it. But the statistics don't bear that out. I don't care what you say. Well, they do. I mean, they do. I mean, you could look. They do bear it out, and the GDP growth goes up, and unemployment goes down. 14 out of 17 times.
I just agreed to that, yes.
Okay. All right, so why are we arguing?
I don't know why.
Okay. We were arguing, though. You were trying to trip me up, is what you were trying to do.
This is not in any way a contest between us. It is a question about digging deeper and understanding more about the mechanism. I don't have any problem with your presentation. I think we all owe you some gratitude for putting it together on short notice. Any deficiencies that it may have, and there aren't very many as a summary, are due to that. I am arguing about what it really means to get to the bottom of understanding the dynamics of the economy. And if anybody really did, we'd be managing it better.
Okay. Here is increased productivity requires incomes to keep up. It's simple. It's not rocket science. If productivity doubles and income stays the same, what happens? Businesses close, right? Unemployment rate goes up, and then it starts feeding on itself. You can't argue that. That's what happens. So, but we're talking about incremental changes year in and year out, and other factors come into play like wars, fear, spikes in energy prices, this, that, and the other. So it's kind of hard to, but the bottom line is increased productivity must be met with incomes must keep up. If I'm still making $1.25 an hour, I can't afford to come out here and eat dinner. I could buy a lot more dinners in 1968 when that minimum wage was equal to $10.68. A lot more people could. And that's what it was. That's what it'd be worth today. $1.60 and $68 is worth $10.68 today. We had a good economy then. We had more GDP growth between 45 and 81 than since. We had lower unemployment rate between 45 and 81 than since. It's averaged 6.06% from 82 onward. It was 4.79% between what I call the aftermath of the New Deal, which was up to the Arab oil embargo. Next.
Well, Jim, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One is,
Okay.
Can you explain to us where the minimum wage came from, how it was created, and why?
Well, it was a New Deal. It was passed during the FDR administration.
Why?
Because two people needed, because I guess his brain trust figured out that that would improve the economy. And it did.
That is not what happened.
It didn't. What happened?
You go back and read the testimony in the U.S. Congress when they passed the bill. The bill was passed to keep minority workers out of construction in the northeastern cities. They were being hired by the contractors and brought up. And the union workers who were doing construction work up there said, we're going to lose our ever-loving jobs because they're going to get the jobs with a lower bid from using lower cost labor. So they went to the Congress. You can go open the documents up, read the testimony. That is why the minimum wage was passed.
Well, what about everything you making?
Everything you read about it now is rather philosophical, but that is not what happened.
Well, I have never read that, and I've read a lot about.
And I've read the text, so I'll stake my life on it.
Well, you may be right, but I've never read it.
And I don't doubt that. Okay.
And I've read a lot about the Depression era.
So we put it in for what a lot of us would say was a crappy.
What's your next question?
My next question is, I understand what you said in terms of a correlation analysis between productivity, gross domestic product, and increasing the minimum wage. I hear that. I took statistics in college, and if you got up and presented that in a class, in a statistics class, the professor would rip you a new one.
Well, bring him on down here and let's have a contest sometime.
In other words,
as a matter of fact, let's me and you have a contest sometime.
In other words, here's the point. You can find two phenomena that exist out there in the world.
Okay.
And you can find one that thinks when this goes up, that goes down. Doesn't necessarily have a blasted thing to do with each other. And you can find things where this goes up, that goes up. Could be related.
Hey, Jim, I sent you a copy of that book too. Open your email and look at the charts and you might change your mind.
I have looked at it, I've read the charts, I understand them.
Do you disagree with them?
I disagree with the conclusion made from the analysis of the numbers. First of all, people who earn minimum wage are not productive workers.
Well,
they are let me finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
Finish my point. They're at least 50% part-timers. College students, high school students, hamburger flippers. They're not out on the production line producing goods and services for us to use. So increasing that minimum wage when you don't have people working in a factory making minimum wage, there is no correlation there. That doesn't cause the production to get better because the workers smile and say, I'm making more money, I'm going to make this machine run faster and produce more widgets.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now. When it was raised to 75 cents, that unemployment rate was going up rapidly.
The correlation of that is when World War II was over, we destroyed Japan.
Forget that.
We destroyed, no.
Forget that crap. That was 5 years before.
We destroyed those economies.
So what?
And it took them a long time to rebuild and to begin competing with us. Your steel mills were producing the product and shipping it over there. Now, guess what? we build the bridge out there across the Trinity. The steel for that bridge and the new one that they're starting on comes from Italy.
Why?
Because they have new, efficient equipment. Ours got old.
We've got the most productive steel industry in the world today, Jim.
Then they're fools if they can't sell their product.
They can't compete with, that's a foreign trade issue, Jim. And you know it, and I know it. That's a foreign trade issue.
It's a person who's going to buy the steel to put in their product is going to buy the best steel that fits that need.
At the lowest possible price.
That's right, and they're utter business fools if they don't. That's what business is all about. Buy as cheap as you can, sell for as much as you can.
Right. And if the foreign trade, if they hadn't passed NAFTA and the WTO agreement, it'd be a different story.
NAFTA don't have anything to do with the Italian steel I just talked about. Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nada.
Okay, it doesn't. But I mean, where does most of the steel come from that we're buying? In Italy?
I haven't gone and studied it. I'm just using that as a simple example of things that we've been after the war.
It was a simple example for sure.
20 years after the war, we had the world by the string. We put the Marshall Plan in. We funded the rebuilding of those countries.
Right.
We made the product over here with our military people coming back home from the war. They were productive as heck, and we paid them very well to do what they did.
Right.
They were very blessed and fortunate. It was circumstantial for the moment. 2014 does not resemble.
So you're
54.
trying to tell me that foreign trade treaties have nothing to do with it? That's what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I'm not. I didn't
That's
say.
what I'm hearing.
I didn't say anything like that.
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
I don't know what you're fantasizing. I'm not saying that or inferring it.
I heard you say get a hearing aid too. You didn't. I didn't say you did. I said I heard someone say it. Anyway.
Where does the money come from when you increase the wage? You create it out of thin air?
From the 1%, how's that?
Huh?
From the 1%. You take all the income and divide by 316 million people, it's $43,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. You dig?
And half of them make no money.
Half of them make no money. I know. And the average wage, median household income a few years ago was $31,244. How hard is that to understand?
It's not hard to understand. We have people now who are retired, and people are earning minimum wage, and with all the subsidies that exist, until they can make $30,000 a year, it does not pay them to advance their career. They're sitting in the cesspool from a career standpoint.
Okay.
We created it off of LBJ procedures that started the whole process.
Let me tell you what I agree with. LBJ's Great Society programs did create a backlash that's going on to this day. I do agree with that. I agree. Welfare for no work, basically. Not the right plan.
When you talk about wage, there has to be some correlation analysis to what the worth of that work is. How much is the work worth? When you raise, one of the effects of raising the minimum wage is you block young, low education level workers out of the workforce.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
You walk down through the ghettos of the old cities.
I don't believe it because the unemployment rate goes down 14 out of 17 times, Jim. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I mean, the charts bear it out.
You're deluded.
No, I'm not deluded. You want to know why we're in trouble? I forget your name, Mr. Churchill. Attitudes like that. People don't know what's going on.
Am I mistaken, or didn't Seattle raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
I don't know if it's that high, but I will tell you one thing. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research on states that have higher minimum wages and see if their unemployment rates went up because of it. You won't see any difference. As a matter of fact, you'll see an improvement. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it, because I've done it. How's that? Do your own. I've done it.
I think we're out of questions. Oh, we got one over here.
Actually, this is I want to do a intellectual experiment. And hopefully we'll have a question at the end of the, you can't hear me?
Now we can.
Intellectual experiment. Okay. Say 40,000 years ago, before we had all the technology we have now. You can't hear me? People lived on what they could kill, right? Or what they could find.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And the gross national product of the world was not a lot.
No. It was not.
Okay. Through a period of time, it slowly got better, and when we had the Industrial Revolution, it got a lot better as far as what a person could produce.
Right.
And you look, and I remember one time in this group, somebody who's, I think in a labor union now, said that say 20 years ago when he was doing running a machine, he looked forward to the day when he could be a supervisor. Mm-hmm. And now he says that there's 20 machines being run by one person, something like that.
Okay.
That's increasing productivity per person. Now this is the intellectual part. Let's assume that goes on and on and on.
And it will.
So that some future date, as far as all the material things are concerned, they're produced
by one person.
By one person. One person.
Right.
So how is the production of that one person going to be assimilated by all other people?
Well, if it gets to that point, I guess we'll have to have socialism, maybe. I don't know.
There'll have to be a way of distributing that production.
Income will have to be redistributed.
Right, and this is what I think you're talking about today. Because I was thinking, people that used to think were low-wage jobs because they didn't involve much skill, maybe will be some reversible, because there are some jobs that some people just wouldn't do. So the fact that they get done is very valuable.
Right.
Let's say cleaning up things, keeping things sanitary.
Right.
Now, we may have thought 15 years ago that that's a very low-wage job, not too important, but now it may be very important that it gets done.
Well, it isn't. Take them out, fire them all and see what happens.
So my point is that I don't think you can look and say, well, what are they worth? Well, why is a football player worth $40 million a year or whatever?
That's a flaw in the capitalistic system, if you ask me. It really is.
I think, frankly, increasing the minimum wage has some of the bad effects that have been mentioned here, but overall, I think it's positive.
But overall, it is positive. If it wasn't...
The intellectual part is, why do y'all disagree with me?
You repeat your question.
Why do you disagree with what I just got to say?
I don't disagree with you. You said it better than I did.
Okay, I think that's it for questions. You get to sit down now. Now it's your turn to talk, so who wants to be first? It has to be a first. Is there going to be a first? Oh, wonderful. Excellent. Excellent.
Yes, actually, some of the questions were, well, how does the economy work? Why should you have a minimum wage, and so on and so forth? Well, it turns out that 70% of consumer spending, actually, or 70% of the GDP is caused by consumer spending. So to have a balanced economy, then supply must equal demand. Now, on the supply, if you have too little supply, that's to say you've not invested enough, then you get inflation because there's too much money chasing too few goods. On the other hand, if you have too little demand, then, of course, then that means to say that the demand is deficient and the economy contracts because obviously producers aren't going to supply goods or make goods that there's no demand for. So the trick in the economy is to make sure the supply equals the demand. That's relatively straightforward. Now, since consumers represent 70% of the demand, they must have money to spend. Now, as we've just heard, the economies grow, things get more productive. So the question is, where does the money go that's generated? Now, capitalism being what it is, and the human greed being what it is, the elite in every country wants to grab more and more and more. And this explains why the Prime Minister of England today earns $140,000 a year, whereas in the City of London, in the financial world, they're pulling in 10, 20 million a year. Now, why is this individual who went to Eton a Prime Minister? Why does he accept such a low salary? And the answer is quite plain, because the elite want to maintain the reins of power and keep the elite going. Now, as I said, so in their idea, the way to keep the elite in their place is to keep keep unemployment as high as possible. That means to say that people are always not actually. It's the middle class that really are the revolutionary class generally, not the very working class. Okay, so it's in the interest of the elite to keep wages as low as possible. And they're flat on their back. They're too poor to actually rise up and do anything. So that's one of the main reasons. Now, one of the main problems when you have, as we have now, a disproportionate share out. So the elite have got more and more and more. Like the 1%, as we know, in America, have got over 20%, more like closing in on 25% of the income. The question is, does that translate to 70% of spending? No, it doesn't. So what we've seen is less and less demand because the elite have got more and more. Now, where does that money they have go to? Well, it actually goes into propping up assets, like housing, like squandering and gambling money on Wall Street. I mean, to operate this high-frequency trading game that they play, which is no more than a refined gambling den, you actually need billions to run this, because they're in and out in seconds. So they're actually forever. So to gain a few pennies, you have to be pumping in hundreds of millions of dollars, every trade almost, and that's what's happening. So much of this money is just going around in this merry-go-round on Wall Street. totally unproductively. So when you keep wages down and you give it to the asset, what I call the asset class, and you see this in spades in London. I mean, house prices and assets just gone through the roof. This is why. And so basically, to get an economy growing, you must make sure that the ordinary working people have money to spend and more money to spend that keeps up with the GDP. Now, up until the or the early 70s, in fact, the wages did keep up pretty much with the GDP. But that really didn't suit the elite. They were unhappy with that because, in fact, they are anti-democratic in their outlook. And so from the 70s, mid-70s onwards, in fact, the share of the cake of the lower people was less and less. In fact, it's flatlined. Now, in England right now, I was there just, in fact, yesterday morning I was there. What's happened since the crash, when we had in fact, just to explain a bit, the whole cabinet is from the elite. Almost all the cabinet went to Eton, Oxford or Cambridge. Now, these people have they shouldn't be running a country. I mean, they have no interest in education because they're privately educated. They have no interest in the National Health Service because they buy privately. And they have no interest in housing because it's okay. So really, they're not the people that should be running a country. Now, the reason for a minimum wage keeping pace is because you need to keep that 70% of demand alive. As it drops because you're cutting the wages, then the economy has to drop. It has to drop. So you go into desperate. Now, the misallocation of resources is why you see America slowly falling behind. I mean, when you look at the products over here, they're definitely behind Europe in most things. It's amazing to see that, but it is true. You know, it's the complacency of this system. They think they can go overseas, but eventually this will result in a huge crash. It must do. I mean, you can't have. I mean, Jim mentioned about trade. Well, we've talked about trade before, but I mean, it's a disaster. It's a disaster on all counts, really. Anyway, so basically speaking, you must have wages keeping up with the GDP to maintain that GDP. Because when it falls, when you pay people less than that, then the GDP will suffer, the growth will suffer, and productivity will suffer. And so you must, this vast waste of money on Wall Street is a disaster. You must make sure that the money is fed back into the productive businesses and not shipped overseas. And that's one of the major problems we have. Now, I mean, I can explain it, much more, but in simple terms, that's it, really. If you don't have the supply equal demand, I mean, Anyway, and the demise of unions really has been a disaster. Really, that's one of the main problems.
Well, let me do it right. Well, just give me a second. You were asking why people don't revolt. What do you think people would change their mind if everyone knew that we had a trade deficit that's been averaging over $1 million a minute for 20 some years? I think they would. They don't know it.
Okay, who's next? Come on up here. Oh, he's after you. You're after. Wait. He's next. You're after him.
Just earlier this week, I heard a speech, which I'm going to have to paraphrase, from Teddy Roosevelt, prior to his cousin, talking about a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. Nowhere did he say minimum wage, but what I'm talking about is a living wage. And I think there's a difference, and I think that's what's important, is because he says for a fair day's work, you should get a fair day's pay to pay for health care, to pay for education, to pay for a reasonable recreation, etc., etc. I mean, that's been a fight that's been ongoing since before the New Deal. And this was a Republican president, okay? All right, now that said, now what happens, let's look at what happens when, or the consequences of not paying people a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. They rely on government assistance. They can't afford to have children. They do anyway, and you can judge that all you want, but they do, and they have a responsibility to care for the kid. They have a responsibility, and I think in most cases, a desire to improve their lot in life. They want to go to school, but circumstances make that almost impossible, you know? So they rely on government assistance, and the same people that deny them that minimum wage increase are the same ones that denounce them for taking advantage on the modest benefits that they have. That's my point. And so who pays for that? The taxpayers. Everybody pays for it. At least, I mean, that's corporate welfare, really. But it's really where corporate welfare and individual welfare sort of meet, where the boundaries get blurred. But that's really what it is. It's corporate welfare. I shouldn't have to subsidize, fast food workers or companies that won't pay their workers what they should get. Now John asks, well, where is the protest? Well, we're seeing there was a protest. Was it a year ago during Black Friday? I forget. There were minimum wage workers that went on strike, and it has to do with there is no organized labor. When they have to go from job to job or worry about where their next paycheck is coming from, they don't have, there's scarcity of time and energy to devote to informing themselves on those issues and acting. But now you're seeing it. You are seeing it despite that lack of an organizational structure. They are, I guess, resorting to social media and things like that to organize themselves and to work as one. Where up to this point, they didn't have that tool and it wasn't effective. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, you're next.
Is this on?
Oh, use
Oh, use these. Okay, right. I have very little to say. I just wanted to bring into the conversation an interesting little statistic that has been remarked on incidentally in a few publications that I have read lately. The money that accumulates at the top of the food chain, the banks, the capitalists, but particularly the banks, there are measures of the capital that is being held by the banks that is not being invested. And they're I've heard something like 22% of the fluid capital at some place like Goldman Sachs is not being invested. It is being held for later gobbling up of things, whatever. But if the people who accumulate capital do not have a burning desire to invest it, and the reason for that burning desire is that is the screw that you turn on the tap that gets more money coming through it. If they do not have that burning desire, then you do not have the main engine, a part of the main engine that drives the economy. So having that money at the top for people who just really like little pieces of paper with Solomon P. Chase's picture on it, which would be a pretty old piece of paper, but that does nobody any good. Eventually, they will buy up some really nice castles in Europe or new yachts or something like that, but they contribute absolutely nothing to making the economy function. And that is a pretty substantial chunk of money that's part of the equation there. And if we don't take that into account, we don't get a good view of why the changes that we can make in the little set screws that we can twiddle with don't seem to have very much effect.
Okay, who's next? Come on up here, Ray.
Well, I'm going to try and stay with minimum wage, despite all efforts to the contrary. Well, I wrote this out this afternoon. If Americans really understood life and human behavior, if they understood the economics, if they understood how businesses work, they would always favor a free market, and they would never want a forced minimum wage. But with a lack of understanding in the media and unions and others talking up minimum wage, most Americans now are just going with the flow. Let's say you get the local teenager to mow your lawn. And he tells you that it will cost you $100. After you pick yourself up, you tell him that's just way too much for your normal size lawn. And you look for a better deal. You find this man. He says he'll do it for $30. He's got an old truck, well-worn equipment. He hardly speaks any English. And you certainly don't want to ask him whether he's legal. Now, you may be supporting illegal immigration, and it might be against the law. But now you hire him because he will mow your lawn for a market price, maybe even less. You are not going to pay more than the job is worth. Most business today, especially small businesses, resist paying an employee more than he is worth. Labor is the business's largest expense. We have had a lot of industrializing. Some of that was alluded to a while ago. We've got big machines. Why bother with machines? Because they will do the work of many, many people. They are cheaper than the labor. That's why they were invented. That's why there is progress. And the labor expense must be kept under control if the business is to survive. And I'm talking about many millions of small businesses especially. It applies otherwise. We said $12 an hour for minimum wage, $20 an hour. If people making more money are going to spend more money and it's going to make the economy just shoot right up, what is the limit? Pay these people $30, $50 an hour? My goodness gracious, they're going to spend more money and the economy is going to boom. And you know that is a fallacy. That is absolutely madness. It will not stimulate the economy any more than $12 an hour will stimulate the economy. You give somebody a certain fixed minimum wage. We've already covered this, but take note. That does not increase productivity. We want productivity, expansion. We want growth. You pay somebody more money, you're not increasing the productivity. The minimum wage was supposed to be for entry-level jobs. It could be Walmart, teenagers at McDonald's. It is not for families. It was never supposed to be a livable wage. If a guy is 28 years old, got a wife and 2 kids, he's working for minimum wage, something is wrong. One of the biggest reasons why teenagers can't get a job in the summertime is because of the minimum wage. This especially hurts black teenagers. Teens won't get hired because they don't have a work history. And they can't get hired because the employer isn't going to pay someone for a job when he believes he is having to overpay. It's why so many teenagers are without a job during the summer. Take note, my friends. Next summer, when you hear all these kids are out of work, it's because of minimum wage. That is one of the chief obstacles. When a good employee asks for a raise in pay, the employer would not want to lose a good employee, so he gets the raise because the good ones are hard to find. Don't you and I rebel at overpaying? We don't want to overpay for our meal tonight. We don't want to overpay for our lawn mowing. A normal market-based price is acceptable, but no one wants to be forced to pay more than the job is worth. Employers don't want to pay more either. The minimum wage is government forced. It is anti-free market. It's just like price controls. They don't work. They end up hurting individuals, businesses. They drive up prices for us as consumers. If we only understood economics and business better, we would reject the minimum wage. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Al.
Hello, Al.
Hey, Jim, how are you? Well, the Chamber of Commerce, when they are considering attracting businesses into a community, figure that every dollar paid in wages becomes $7 in circulation because the baker buys from the butcher who buys from the bootmaker and whatever. So, yeah, bookmaker. There's a lot of that going on too. Concerning productivity and increase in business and so forth, it's a complicated equation that's not just simple that when you have increase in productivity, you have to have increase in minimum wage. What you have usually is an increase in numbers of people to produce all of that productivity as well. So when you talk about overall income, you have to consider not only the average income of all the ones you're considering times the number of people, but you have to begin to look at, okay, corporations make lots of money and they pay X amount of it in wages and billions of it to the fascist dictators who run those businesses and bonuses. A $50 million bonus is $1,050,000 jobs. Now, is that executive worth it? Is that job worth $50 million? I don't think so. But that's what we're in. I listened to these issues again, and tonight was an example of it. And I bring up the metaphor I used before of a cockfight. We're looking at things that are important, but they are way down the scale here. And we're all the victims of it. The more that we are liberal and Republican, Democrat, all of these separating issues, we need to just flush all that stuff out and look a lot higher. Up there at the people who are betting on us and warming up the barbecue outside to roast us when the fight is over. And that's what's been going on for centuries. Thomas Jefferson, again, I've repeated this a number of times, said essentially that if we ever let a private bank take over the control of the money in this country, that through inflation and deflation and the corporate structure that will grow up around it, i.e. today's fascism, they will steal all of the property from our descendants and leave them homeless in the land that we have founded. He had to have been a time traveler from today back to then to carry that message. Iceland is the most perfect example I've ever seen of what people need to do. Thousands of Icelanders, after they had their economic collapse, said, hey, we didn't do this. You bankers did this. This is your fault, not ours. It's not the economy's fault. It's your fault. Inflation and deflation are programmed and carried out not by the economy, but by those who control the economy on purpose for the purpose of stealing property. And so they took thousands of pots and pans and surrounded all their government offices and beat hell out of them until they scared all of those people out. Then the people who owned those government offices had held elections, elected a complete new government, and then started criminally prosecuting the bankers. That's what we need to do. The Rothschild banking system in this world, of which the Federal Reserve is a very important part, needs to be prosecuted criminally top to bottom. And we need to learn that. If you've ever had a chance to talk with Jimmy Moriarty about some of the things that he experienced beyond what he's even said in his presentations of dealing with those bankers, it's just incredible. He made a very disturbing statement to me the other day on the phone. I said, you know, it's encouraging to me that the BRIC nations are forming a new asset-backed currency. And he said, Albert, he said, still, the major banks of those countries, Russia and China, are still Rothschild-controlled banks. And that, to me, that was heartbreaking. I hope they get around this and throw those criminals out. Capitalism versus free enterprise. This nation became very strong and produced the healthiest middle class in world history, at least that we have in our history books, by free enterprise, not capitalism. Those who got greedier and greedier and greedier got more focused on capital, dollar bills, and they started moving us into a fascist system like we're in now, a worldwide capitalist system. I don't like that word any more than I like socialism. And socialism today is fascism. I still hope you can get Virginia Prodan to come talk about her experience under Ceausescu. When they put in socialism, it turned into fascism and all the wages went down. Well, I guess that kind of covers it. We're all in a cockfight. We're all seeing minor little emotional issues. If you use a thermometer or use a measuring stick, how much emotion do you have about this issue that you're arguing about? That degree of emotion is altering your perception of reality. Stand back, don't destroy the emotions because you don't want to become sociopathic, but keep them in control and use reason, because the people of this country have to compromise on issues to agree on something to move forward, and no one side is going to get 100% satisfaction. If they did, it would be wrong.
Okay, yeah, I'm tripping over the wire, sorry. Who's next? Got to be a next.
I'd like to say something.
Come on up here.
You know, I like to say that, you know, these last 6 or 7 speakers have been just really excellent. And I learned a lot just sitting here and listening. But Tom, I think something needs to be done about the question and answer part of this college of complexes. I think somebody has to be a moderator. And I think tonight, when we began to call each other names and things like that, what was the word that was used? Anyway, I think that for the question and answer part of this, I think it goes beyond just asking a question and letting the moderator or letting the speaker, you know, answer the question. And really, to me, it was very destructive, and made me kind of angry to listen to all of it.
Well, we'll try to police the question and answer period better than we have been. What I want to say, we can't let the person asking the question make great speeches. That's what we'll have to schedule. Well, anyway, it's a small group, so I let it go. Anyway, Who else would like to come on up here?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about two topics. One is the actual average working man who's considered to be an unskilled, unworthy of his hire these days. That's totally untrue. I mean, I remember my father, when he started to work, he used to put, you know, in the family business, hang curtains up on concrete lintels. He had a steel spike and a hammer. Okay, so it took him about 5 minutes to knock in one hole. Well, these days, they have a vibrating hammer that will do that in about, you know, everywhere you look, even the most unskilled guy, he's got a power tool. I mean, really, all these tools are amazing to see. I mean, a Dremel tool. Even, look, you see this most unskilled guy on a roof these days, it's bang, 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 you know. I mean, compare that even to, say, 30 years ago. So even the most unskilled person is using, you know, a skilled tool. So to say that these people, you know, aren't worth anything or they're unskilled is totally untrue. Most people have some degree of skill. In fact, when you see Mexicans work, okay, I mean, we just had a plastic deck put in our house, and to see these people come up and work together, it was amazing, actually. I mean, they knocked that thing. It looks beautiful, actually. Their skill was amazing. So the question is okay. Really, what happens is if you pay people more, yeah. What happens is the guy can't afford to pay them 10 bucks an hour. So what does he do? He actually gives them better tools to use. So in fact, they're worth the money, and that's been the history of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, you know, that's what happened. And because we had the Luddites in England that broke the tools, okay. But what happens is the people go, you know, even the dumbest person can use, you know, a power tool. Can use, you know, look at the checkouts these days. You know, in fact, you know, you go to Home Depot. There's one person there looking at things, and there's people using all the machines. I mean, look at the productivity there. Even though a supposedly unskilled person is in fact more skilled because of this today's technology, and they're worth the money. They are actually worth the money. How would you like to stand all day long, you know? So, you know, a labourer is worth his hire. And take a cleaner. I mean, in the old days, you used to go around with a mop, blah, blah, blah. Now you see them going around with a machine. It's faster, cleaner, and so they're worth more. So the argument that people aren't worth money, I think, is fallacious, okay? So that's the point. You don't denigrate people like that. You give them tools and so on. You train them. You make them better. Okay, that's one point. Second point is about the financial system. Now, I proposed, really, I go much further than Glass-Steagall, okay? Because I think this financial system, as Albert says, does not work, really. And I think the bankers are the most collection. I mean, the City of London, when I said, was it 3 or 4 years ago, that all the crooks went to London, I'm sure people laughed. Well, it's proven to be true. Because almost every week now they're being found that there was some scandal or the next, you know. There's no end to it. Okay, so you really need to reform it top to bottom. One, we need to go to a normal high street commercial bank, okay. You know, it makes loans to people, so on. Then we have to have a savings and loan that as we used to, that funds housing, you know, from deposits. So where the loan officer actually, you know, holds the money, so we don't get the spiz on Wall Street. Thirdly, we need to have a proper investment bank that takes our savings and insurance companies' money and actually invests it via bonds to productive companies. And fourthly, if you must have a gambling den in Wall Street, fine. But you see, if the main pile of money goes to the high streets and investment bank and so on, there's only the very wealthy will be gambling on Wall Street, and if they go broke, good luck. So really, to get the country back on straight, we really need to look at the financial system and the banking system and clear this gang out on Wall Street. And as I've said before, you should have one central organization that runs the monetary system and the fiscal system. Okay, because you know, having one central bank, which is a private bank, controlling the economy via interest rates is ridiculous.
Okay, who wants to be next? Oh, come on up here.
John always has a way of stimulating my thinking. That's right. And twisting it. Concerning the value of a job, what is someone worth? When we had slavery, it wasn't worth anything to pay anybody to pick cotton at all. That job was worthless because we had slavery. Well, if we work in companies and earn $50,000, $100,000 a year, and a guy takes home $50 million a year, we're slaves. Every single one of us in this room and in this world today are slaves to this system. This is not right. Marla Morgan brought out in her book, Mutant Message from Down Under, when she helped a group of Aborigines who had immigrated into the city, and the Australians considered them less than human, so they never helped them at all. She went into the ghetto and helped them. She pulled them together and said, look, I've put together businesses, I can help you do that. Let's sit and think up a good product. And they realized that at that time there were lots of bugs in Australia and no screens in the windows virtually. So they made this little screen, sort of like the things you expand around your window air conditioner, that they could put a screen in the window, bring the window down and expand it out, and it kept the bugs out. And they started a business with this. And it was very profitable. Everybody was excited. They did well. And then she realized one day, well, the guy that comes in early in the morning and lays out all the tools and then stays and sweeps up and hangs up all the tools at night, he got paid exactly as much as the president and all the salespeople and the workers. And she said, why is this? And they were just dumbfounded. They said, well, he's just as essential to this company as we are. We are all equal in the eyes of God. And we need to realize that, not just rely on that and be lazy, but we need to realize that for our fellow man. And we need to take these fascist things that have been done to us, like NAFTA and GATT treaties, so that the jobs that would pay under our cultural standards are moved to countries where the cultural standards are such that they can have slave labor, in essence, compared to ours. And I think that if we did this, as far as illegal, yes, be compassionate with people, but illegal immigrants, to cater to that, we are bringing in their lower standards culturally of how their people are treated in their countries into this country and diminishing the quality of life in this country. That's what we're doing, and it is not good for the world. We cannot solve all of the problems for all of the people in the world. We can only do the best we can do here and hope to have enough influence on other countries and other leaders by putting some pressure on them to do better for their people. But we have to start here and not let that flood. Immigration, if you read history, has destroyed more nations than you can imagine. Ancient Egypt being one of the greatest examples. And that was a flourishing, happy nation until it had a revolution of immigrants that destroyed it. That's a whole other subject.
Okay, who's next? Jim? All right.
Well, thank you, Jim, for coming and addressing a subject spontaneously. Tom grabbed you and you stepped up to the bar, so thank you so much. The subject is, when we talk about minimum wage, is an emotional subject. And I said some things about it that are not positive. I would agree with Ray. I'd love to see us do away with it. I don't think it needs to be there. Reality is, we're not gonna. You know, it's an institution now. We put it into effect back in the 30s, so it's roughly 80 years old. It's not going away. A lot of what we're dealing with is a cultural issue. It's not economic. It has nothing to do with minimum wage. For example, if you have a boy and a girl make it through high school. They don't get an hour of college. They get married. Not pregnant. They're making 725. They're making $15. They're making $30,000 a year, $14.50 an hour, a little over 30 grand. That's not poverty. They can go to community college very inexpensively and add to their education. They won't be at minimum wage very long. When they walk into a job, if they even start at minimum, they'll climb out of it pretty quickly. And it's a very sustainable lifestyle. You don't need $15 or $30 an hour minimum wage to support a basic household. By putting a lot of the welfare benefits into place that we have in the minority community, we've dropped their marriage rates from higher than white to way off the bottom of the scale, because you are loaded with about 2/3 single moms with children drawing benefits, and they can live. Their wages, sorry, if they haven't done good education. They don't have a second family income, but they get a lot of benefits. We've created that, and it's not going to go away. It's unfortunate. I wish I could change it, but I can't. So the reality is it's going to stay there. How high does it need to be? That's about as arbitrary as anything could be. We could choose to make it be anything we want to be. If you raise wage, you're taking the money out of the corporate bucket and decreasing the profits that are used to expand the business. So that money you don't just reach up out in the air and put $3 an hour, let's say, on the minimum wage. Here's one thing I would say about minimum wage. I don't think it should be a single number nationally. The country is very, very diverse. It's very different living in Helena, Montana, and living in the Bronx, living in downtown LA, living in San Francisco, DC, Boston. Costs a lot more. If you're going to try to tie minimum wage to cost of living, you can understand why a lot of states have come in and installed minimum wages that are higher than the federal minimum. I understand that. There's logic to it. But if you raise the national standard, then it's going to be more harmful in terms of job creation and availability for people who live in areas where the economy doesn't support that. So we're not in one big bucket nationally. We're very diverse. So I think we need to have a tiered, multi-level minimum wage that reflects the cost of living in the cities that it applies to, or the metropolitan areas that it applies to. Personally, I'd do away with it because I think I should be able to walk into a business and sell them my skills for what I can bargain from them. And they should be able to buy my services, not going to buy me, buy my services as inexpensively as they can. That's the nature of economics. But we have flaws, and we have a system that's now as old as it is. About the best thing I think we can do for it is tweak it, try to make it work better, but stop listening to the argument that says, oh me, I can't make it on $7.25 an hour. No, you can't. If you go back to the period of time when Jim was talking about like 50s and 60s and job creation was going great, lived here in Dallas, and man, the people were moving in and renting the apartments down on Gaston and Live Oak, which are mostly still standing there, and 4 people were moving into an apartment. Now, if they were doing that today, 4 people in that little 2-bedroom apartment, They're each making $725. They take the lowest paid job. That ain't gonna happen. But let's say they all did. They're making 60 grand in that apartment complex. And the rent is about $7,000 or $8,000 a year. They're not doing bad at all. They can live a good life until they decide to fall in love and get married and have a family. But to give people to say we don't state it, but we're doing it. To tell people they can go to 10th grade, start a family, get out and have a good life, and we'll pick up the difference in what you are able to earn and what it takes to support the family you've chosen to generate is pretty irresponsible. Because it is not necessary. You can do pretty normal things and create a household that will support itself. We talk about minimum wage. Probably the average low-skilled job pays about $9, as most of the statistics I've seen. And so 2 people working, making each $9, it's not bad. They can make it. So don't get too worked up about it. It's here. It's going to stay. We need to tweak it. We're not going to do away with it. Let's just make it work better. Thanks.
We got any more next? We're out of people now, I think. Looks that way. Well, come on up here.
I'll make it quick. It was mentioned that there must be some flaw in capitalism whenever football players can make jillions of money out there, that there surely must be something wrong there. If you have a owner like Jerry Jones, and he says, I'm going to pay you $6 million this year, and you can be a running back, DeMarco Murray or whatever, that is capitalism, it is the market. And if Jerry Jones, who owns the whole works, wants to pay him $6 million, go for it. We should celebrate. That's a good thing. And whenever that player ceases to produce, he will not stay there very long. And whenever he does really well, he's going to make still more with his next contract. And if Jerry Jones wants to pay him more, we should be glad for that too. That is capitalism. That is when he earns his keep. And take note, pro football has made millionaires out of more blacks than any industry, and that needs to be celebrated.
Amen.
I guess we're out of people. You got another comment?
It's the word of the order of the day. More than one pitch. Let me say a brief word about income distribution. John Beasley made a very good point tonight about the traders who are making the big money. You know, our politicians get up and rant and rave about the top 1% who are stealing it from the world and putting it in their pocket and depriving us of income growth. Hogwash. Hogwash. The top 1% are mostly doing things like John's talking about. They're out there trading in the market. I've worked with them as a CPA. I've worked for them as a CPA. I understand how that works. My fellow CPA here tonight, Charles, could tell you some pretty similar things. So the point is, the top 1% is not stealing the money out of the bottom class and putting it in their pocket by underpaying them. In many cases, they don't even have any employees. If they do, they're employees like highly paid administrative assistants who may be making $250,000 a year. They don't have any minimum wage workers or even bottom 20% workers working for them. They're a part of a little piece of the economy that's apart from the mainstream. So once you carve that off, then what exists in the other 99% that we heard ranted and raved about last fall a lot is pretty normal. It has a spread, and people move between. Almost nobody starts off in the bottom 20% and stays there, or in the next, or the next, or the next. About 20% of the people who start off in the bottom income strata move to the top. A majority of people will move 2 levels in the economy during the course of their career. That includes people going up, it includes people going down. If you look at people who produced the top 5% income levels this past year, a whole lot of those will not be on the list next year. They're not a bunch of cultural elite who are sitting up there taking the money from others. A big percentage of those people in the very top in a year are people who sold the family business. They cashed in. Their basis was $1.5 million. They sold it for 14. They made $12.5 million profit. That shows up in the number, and we go, wow. And that is wonderful. We'll all take it, but they ain't going to repeat it next year. So the people in the lower end are people who are politicians, who are talk to people at the bottom. They want to persuade them that the rich are reaching into their pockets and taking their money, and that's why they're not making more money. Hogwash. If you look at the cost of the payroll, even if a company's payroll has not, if their paycheck level has not increased, the cost of their payroll has gone up. And a lot of that's because of government regulation. The taxes have gone up, the cost of the benefits have gone up. They're now required to pay them all instead of less than all. So the actual income level of those people has gone up. It's just not on their tax return. It's not on their W-2. It's not taxed. It's paid for by the company on their benefit. Do people want to talk about that to the lower income people? No. They don't acknowledge it, but it's true. Thank you.
Well, since you guys are rambling, I'll ramble. I'm a compassionate liberal, so I kind of disagree with what you said. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is what the cost of living is for somebody. If somebody is willing to go to work 40 hours a week, do the job that they're asked to do, they're productive for the company makes money off of them, then in my opinion, they ought to be able to eat and afford some level of health care and not have to fight for transportation. They ought to be able to afford, I think about the way that my mom grew up, taking the bus to come and see me in a hospital. Imagine the time that she ate up doing that in the cold. And she wasn't a minimum wage worker by any means. It was tough for her. So I can't imagine what it would be like actually trying to have any kind of a family or any kind of a connection even to society at $7, $8 an hour or $12. I mean, it's just not enough to do what you need to do. So what happens is that money gets deflected onto all of us because those people are going to get health care. They're going to get transportation. DART's going to rape us for sales tax and issue bonds, and all of those things cost money. And we pay for them, it's just hidden. So I think the social thing needs to be considered. Do we want to be a country where people can work all the time and not be able to feed their kids? Is that really a choice that's fair? And the average worker on minimum wage, I heard people throw that around a lot, looked it up on the internets, and 88% of the people that are on that make minimum wage are 20 years old or older. 35 is the average age of a minimum wage earner. So this myth that it only affects black kids in the ghetto, or that it only affects high school kids that haven't graduated yet, is exactly that. It's a myth. It's told to you, it's crammed down your throat, and it's not true. Educationally, I'm going to bounce a little bit. Somebody asked the question, why do people accept that and not rebel? And I just want to posit this for you. It really has nothing to do. It's probably a whole nother argument, but you need to remember that this state testing thing began about 25 years ago. And it's been crammed down teachers' throats so hard. And teachers, I don't care what you say, I am one, so I've seen it. They work their you-know-what's off. And they are so goal-oriented that they will do. It's proven that they will do. If the state says teach this, then they will get it done. And so they have been teaching toward the test to the point that for 25 years, think about that. These people are 31, 32 now that started having that happen to them. And since, for the people that are under 32 years old, if they've gone to a public school, and God knows if they've gone to a charter school, they didn't learn how to think. But for 25 years now, we have been drilling that down people's throats so much that teachers don't have time to ask the question why. That really, to a teacher today, is almost irrelevant because it doesn't help their test score, and that's sad. I actually had, the last year that I taught, I had a girl come up to me and go, why are you making us come up with the answers? I taught technology. You'd think there'd be straight answers to that, but what's the best form of energy? Try to answer that. So I tried to teach my kids to think about, these are all the impacts, these are all the costs. And I wouldn't give them an answer on that. And I had one kid that literally just yelled at me for 30 minutes saying, every other teacher I've ever had has told me what the answers are. Yes or no? A, B, C, or D. So if this is what the pay is, and that's what these folks are going to accept. They really do believe in A, B, C, D. The last thing about the NFL, and I hate to mention it, but it's one of my sore spots. I also know a lot about free enterprise, and the last bastion of non-free enterprise in the world. It's almost a state-run thing, the NFL. They pay no taxes. And imagine just being told, no matter how much money you make, commissioner of the NFL makes $40 million a year. Think about that. That's like, what, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million per team. I don't know what that is. I can't imagine. How could he work that hard? And it's just because there's money there, because there's no taxes. I think the statistic is now that every NFL stadium has been built with taxpayer monies equaling about 40% of the cost of the stadium. Imagine if you could start a business and the government would pay 40% of your business and then tell you do whatever you want, you don't have to pay any taxes. I would think it would be profitable, and you could probably pay some of your people. The guy selling hot dogs ain't making that money. They get slammed and charged extra if they forget to give change back. It's only a very select few who are making that much money in order to put on the show, so that these uber wealthy people can literally get a tax-free income off of a taxpayer-built business.
Okay, are we out of next? I guess we're out. I'm the last one standing. Where's our speaker there? He's coming. He's wandering in there again. Anyway.
Right here, Tom.
What? Did you want to say something? No. No, it's not time to go yet. We got to put our speaker back on. I'm the last man standing, so I get to say something anyway. First of all, I think our speaker did a great job tonight, especially on short notice. I'm so happy he's here. We wouldn't have had what we have. We wouldn't have had this if he wasn't here. Anyway, my background is I was a union rep for 16 years in Chicago, so I understand that. And I look at wages. Unions have been hurt in this country, something fierce. That's true. We have great influence of money on Congress today. We got corporations that are controlling the country, if you think about it. Congress is bought and paid for. We got the best Congress money can buy. That's our problem. I think it was Winston Churchill once said that the Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing after they try everything else. That's when you're a nemesis there. We're on the decline. Our jobs are overseas. We can't support our infrastructure. We need to put tariffs on corporations, not on countries. Where every product imported will have a tariff equal the difference in labor and environmental costs. Then corporations would have their options to produce things here to sell here, as would be far more economical to do so. Then we could take action to reduce the hours of work per day, 6-hour day instead of an 8-hour day, without reducing the pay per day. I'd like to touch on that for a minute. You know, in 1938, they shortened the workday in this country from 10 hours to 8 hours. It was the Fair Labor Standards Act. It was a federal law, not a state law. It only affected interstate commerce. It only affected those corporations engaged in operation in more than one state. It did not affect small business. It did not affect corporations in states. But within 5 years, it was an unholy alliance. Big business and labor went hand in hand. Each state legislature put the small business people on a shorter workday because misery little company want to eliminate their competition. That's how we got the 8-hour day. That's how we got the 5-day work week in this country. People have forgotten that. That's how it happened. It could happen again. Only this time I think we need, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, machines replace people. Machines don't pay taxes. It's been going on since the beginning of time. In Europe, here, everywhere. I was in the railroad industry. We had 5 people on a train. Now there's 2 people on a train. They're talking about putting 1 person on a train. They got rid of the caboose, put everybody in the engines. They got too many people. They got rid of the people. So now they're making more money than ever. They're more productive than ever. They got rid of everybody. And they had 5, now there's 5 people on pension for everyone that's working. That's how bad it is. So they went after the Railroad Retirement Board, went after the corporation, said you got to do something. We can't afford the pension costs. We can't have 1 person paying for 5 people. It doesn't work. So now the corporation is paying 2.5 times what the employee pays for pension costs, and they're happy to do it because they're making a fortune. This is what's happened in our country. So machines do replace people, and machines don't pay taxes, and that's why we have 25 million people out of work in this country. I don't know if you realize it, but that's how bad it is. So if we reduce the hours of work per day to a 6-hour day instead of an 8-hour day without reducing the pay per day, that's another thing. When they went from 10 hours to 8 hours, they didn't cut the pay. They got the same money in 8 hours. They used to make it 10 hours. We could change the Adamson Law and the Fair Labor Standards Act to increase overtime. We need to increase overtime to double time. Why? So that the cost of overtime would outweigh the cost of fringe benefits. Then the manager makes a determined decision for profit to hire more people instead of working existing people longer hours, which we want them to do in the first place. Then you could have more people working paying taxes, less people not working draining taxes. The government get a twofold benefit of increased tax revenue not raising taxes, then less bills to pay for people who aren't working as they be working. It also has a compounding effect. When everybody's working, the slackers don't get along too well. Everybody's mad at them. They go to work. 25 million people could be reemployed full-time, making them taxpayers instead of tax drainers. That's what could happen. Before any of this could happen, though, we have to reduce the influence of money on congressional elections. As challengers to incumbents have received absolutely nothing in campaign contributions for the past 14 years. And as corporations controlling Congress is by definition fascism, and it is, Congress needs to act and instruct the Federal Communications Commission to require the media to provide sufficient free airtime in general elections. The last 90 days of a general election then the incumbent and the challenger would both have free airtime. Congress would be able to keep their money and obtain free airtime. They'll vote for it. That's what we have to put to them. The end result would be a Congress that represents people instead of those who are currently buying their vote in Washington. That's what we got to get them representing the people. Then the legislature could be passed to level the playing field on corporate power, improve working conditions for the people Congress is supposed to represent, and have a general improvement in the United States economy without fear of the dollar being thrown off its pedestal, which is another fear we have today, because our balance of payments is unbelievable. We're practically broke. We got too many people out of work. Anyway, that's where we're at. That's my view of the situation. And I'd like to hand this back to our speaker tonight. He gets the last word. Get your comment now.
Industrialization has benefited everybody in one way or another. Now, productivity is going to continue to improve, and the gains in that productivity must be allocated somehow in a fair manner in order for an economy to be healthy. We can argue about the causes of unemployment, but let's just do it this way. To all those who don't think that productivity gains should be spread equally and help benefit the guy at the very bottom, let's just go back to what people made before the steam engine was invented and see what happens. You want to do that? Be my guest. There's you can go over, there's plenty of nations over there in Africa that where you can do that. The minimum wage. I am convinced that it's a good thing. If you don't have it, too many people are going to try and rob people of their labor. Slavery is a flaw in free enterprise. It's a flaw. It needs, yes it is, it's a flaw in free enterprise. Don't shake your head no, because we had it in this country for years. Well, you can, but so you want to go back to slavery?
I'm listening to you.
Okay. Well, I don't want to go back to slavery. And I don't want to see other people be robbed of their labor either. And that's all I've got to say.
Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be here next week. You've already got your itinerary on that. And we're going to try, we'll go down to Starbucks down the corner. You're all welcome. Our speaker's welcome. And he's going with me, so he'll be with us. Have a good week.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next